Hello and welcome to my video covering every single skill in Monster Hunter World and Monster Hunter World Iceborne. This video is meant to rank skills in their usefulness for beginners, so keep that in mind. I will first go over every skill, explain what it does, and then give it a rating. But before doing any of that, I will have to get a few very important things out of the way. These ratings are based on facts and personal experience of myself and other extremely knowledgeable people I have been in contact with. That does not mean that you have to listen to me. It is your game, so you can decide to play in whatever way you want. The most important thing about gaming is not to play well, it is to have fun. I will first go over every single skill that appears by itself and then list all the set bonus skills, where I then point out unique skills while considering the restrictions which arise from them only coming with those armor pieces. I will mention every skill in the game, but the entire rating will ignore anything related to mastering Kulftaroth, Safi'jiiva, Elatrion and Fatalis. Therefore, I will also not rate the skills found on their armor sets/weapons, as beating those monsters makes you less of a target audience. You will definitely still learn something new in this video and most of the rating will still apply to you as well. But the usefulness of some skills heavily depend on gear only obtained from those monsters. I will go quite in depth for some of these skills. Do know that you don't have to understand every explanation of the skill. That's why I rank them and also talk about them in a more casual manner. Next, I want to mention that there is more to building your armor set than just knowing what skills you want. If you want to keep it simple, you can just use this video to determine what you want to use your slots for. But when it comes to building a completely new set, then you also have to find the combination of armor pieces, your charm, and decorations that most efficiently lets you equip the desired skills. Basically, you want to use an armor set builder, which you can find a lot of online. Lastly, before we begin, I will quickly explain what my ratings mean. There are 7 categories, so let me quickly explain their definition, as that is very important to understand when going through this. Useless. The basic definition of this tier is, using these will have no beneficial or detrimental impact on your gameplay, though actively going for skills in this tier will put you at a disadvantage as you could instead use actually useful skills. However, most armor pieces will have skills you don't want. That is still fine. Situational lower and situational upper. Skills in the situational tiers are only ever useful under the circumstances which I describe when going over that skill. In every other scenario, they have the useless rating. Skills in the lower version, while not being useless in the given scenario, are still easily outclassed by other skills and should only be used if you find yourself struggling a lot with something the skill can help you with, or you simply have no better options. Again, I specifically go over that when talking about these skills. Skills in the upper situational tier, while still situational, are extremely valuable in the given scenario, effectively being as good as skills in the 2 highest tiers under the mentioned conditions. Always useful. This tier inhabits skills that are useful in almost any given situation. These are the better options that you should replace situational skills with if those are not needed. The usefulness of these skills still depends on your playstyle, meaning you will still have to decide which of these skills benefit your preferences. Use it. These skills are not just always useful, they are also always the best option for the playstyle they support. I would even go as far as saying that most of these skills benefit you regardless of what playstyle you prefer. Detrimental. Never use these skills and don't use equipment that gives you these skills. Of course, they are all unique, so again, watch the respective part of the video to learn more. Gather/farming. This is self-explanatory. These skills are completely useless during combat, but can greatly benefit you when farming for items or materials. When it comes to deciding what skills to use, I have put together a few rules that I view as important. Finding the balance between offense and defense. Generally, I would recommend starting with more defensive skills and then replacing them with offensive ones as long as you can still reliably survive the hunt. You can of course take the opposite route by starting with only offense and adding defense whenever you are struggling. A higher offense brings many benefits, such as making the monster flinch or fall over much more often. Additionally, the faster the monster dies, the less chances there are for you to die. That said, the most important thing should always be you successfully completing your hunts, otherwise you just wasted a bunch of time. This balance is completely up to you. Don't use non-offensive skills for offense, and don't use niche offensive skills for offense. Whenever you want to deal more damage, it's generally never justifiable replacing skills that simply let you deal more damage with skills that create an opening to deal more damage. Even if you create that opening, you will then have less damage output to make good use of it. Replace skills with consumables whenever possible. Never do the opposite. You can only put so many skills on your set, so pushing the rolls of skills onto food buffs or items is extremely valuable, since you then get that skill without sacrificing any other skills. Multiplicative increases are always better than additive ones. To make it even more clear, additive increases are only worth it if you have reached 100% effective affinity, and are already using all better offensive choices. On Master Rank you are dealing with big numbers. Adding a flat amount to that does not change the number nearly as much as a percentage increase. Keep that in mind when seeing different increases for the same stat throughout multiple skills. Poison Resistance reduces the duration of poison or makes you immune. Poison can be inflicted by these monsters. Sleep Resistance reduces the duration of sleep or makes you immune. Sleep can be inflicted by these monsters. Muck Resistance negates the movement limitations when caught in monster muck. That is dropped by these monsters. Blast Resistance delays Blast Blade and Blast Scourge and reduces blast damage or makes you immune altogether. Note that Blast is not an element, meaning that being immune to these makes you never take blast damage. Blast Blight is inflicted by these monsters. Blast Scourge can be dealt by these. Bleeding Resistance reduces damage from heavy bleeding or makes you immune. This status is inflicted by these monsters. And Iron Skin reduces the duration of defense down or makes you immune to it. Defense down can be inflicted by these monsters. I place all these skills in the useless tier. None of them actually protect you from getting inflicted by that status unless you go to level 3, meaning that especially the sleep ailment will still put you at a big disadvantage. But more importantly, the more common status ailments are easily healed by consumables. Use antidotes or herbal medicine to heal poison. Use an energy drink to get rid of sleep buildup. Muck is only used by Bareth and Joratotus, two very easy to fight monsters. Blast Blight is best removed by rolling 3 times. Blast Scourge is best removed by taking a Nullberry. Use Estera Jerky to heal heavy bleeding. And defense down is negated by using an Adamant Seed, which then even boosts your defense. Paralysis Resistance reduces the duration of being paralyzed or makes you immune. Paralysis is inflicted by these monsters. This is placed in the lower situational tier. That is because, unlike the other status ailments, there is no way to prevent this affliction apart from this very skill. Paralysis is only really used by one dangerous monster, being Kirin, and you will most likely die to its attacks before ever having it paralyze you. But Viper Tobikidachi can also be a pain to deal with while going through the story, so using this is at least an option against the latter. Stun Resistance reduces the time you are stunned or makes you immune. You get stunned by repeatedly getting hit in quick succession, meaning every monster can stun you. This gets increased when afflicted with Thunderblight. More about this when we go over Blight Resistance. You can get rid of stun by spamming inputs as so. Simple stuff really. This skill goes into the lower situational tier. If you are new to the game and don't know how the monsters fight, you will inevitably get hit more often, getting yourself stunned in the process. However, this skill does not actually let you take more hits and should therefore always be replaced by defensive skills that sit higher on this list. Therefore, the only scenario in which you want to use this skill is you being inexperienced and also not having any better defensive options. Also, if you do use this, then note that level 2 of this skill already almost negates stun, so the last level can be better used for another skill. Lastly, I quickly want to mention that people tend to use this instead of Thunder Resistance. So let me quickly show you when that actually applies. Choosing between them already only applies to a scenario where you struggle against a Thunder element monster, so you are choosing between 2 level 3 skills. One lets you take more hits from thunder attacks and makes you immune to Thunder Blight, which then eliminates the threat of getting stunned easily. The other skill simply has you not get stunned. Stun resistance is clearly the inferior option. Even if your armor starts with negative thunder defense and you don't reach a total of 20 with the thunder resistance skill, as 10 elemental defense already weakens blights and taking less damage still slightly lessens the detriment of being stunned. Earplugs reduce or prevent the effect of monster roars. Levels 1 to 3 focus on weak monster roars, while levels 4 and 5 focus on strong monster roars. Strong monster roars are used by the monsters shown on screen now. When a monster roars, you are locked into place, not being able to perform any action besides extremely reduced movement. I place this in the lower situational tier. Monster roars are barely ever a threat, as most of the monsters also can't move while they roar, effectively just pausing the fight for a few seconds. You do gain an offensive advantage as you can attack the monster while it roars, but not only is this a negligible increase in offense, it's more importantly also a prime example of using non-offensive skills for offense. Don't even get into the habit of that. Now, this skill is not in the useless tier, as there are a few monsters against which you can justify using this. There are monsters that just roar a lot and can sometimes even hit you right afterwards while you are stunned. The most notable offenders of that are Kushala Daora and the Nergigantes. And then there's also Lunastra. She always roars before unleashing her strongest attack, which has huge range. With Earplugs level 5 you can simply sheath your weapon whenever she roars and take some distance just in case. Again, keep in mind to treat this as a defensive skill, and there are many other ones that are generally a lot better. Lastly, if you are using a weapon that can easily block, then this skill is also never worth it. I will say that you can justify putting this into the upper situational tier for Switch Axe at exactly level 1, since this will give you Earplugs level 5 on a zero-sum discharge, meaning you can use this single level to deal a lot of free damage completely safely. Keep in mind that that is only needed on monsters with strong roars. Windproof reduces or negates the effects of wind pressure. Levels 1 to 3 focus on minor wind pressure, where levels 4 and 5 focus major wind pressure. Wind pressure will slightly push you back or even make you slide backwards, depending on the level, rendering you immobile for a few seconds. There is sadly no concise list on what monsters inflict what level of wind pressure that I could find, but it's also really not that big of a deal. This goes into the useless tier. You will rarely ever experience wind pressure, and even if you do, it will rarely put you into danger. Most importantly, the one monster that does use wind pressure extensively, Kushala Daora, will build up to use an even stronger version of wind, which will not be negated by Windproof level 5. To negate that, you will need the Hunting Horn Melody buff All Wind Pressure Negated, or the set bonus skill Nullify Wind Pressure. Tremor Resistance reduces or negates the effects of tremor. Level 2 negates minor tremors and level 3 negates major tremors. The tremor effects make you tremble and unable to perform any action besides drastically reduce the movement. It's basically a more severe version of Monster Wars. For this as well, there are no sources online that go over which monster creates what tiers of tremor, and again it's fine. This goes into the useless tier. Again, while there are a few strong monsters that can cause heavy tremor, the game generally makes sure to give you the opportunity of escaping by mashing buttons. Dungmaster heightens the chance of monsters leaving the area when hit by a dung pot. Every now and then you will have a random monster join your fight, which is pretty much always extremely annoying. Shooting any of the monster with a dung pot then has a high chance to make them leave, which is increased by this skill. I put this in the useless tier. That is because the chance of dung pots working is already high. This is only a single level skill, which does make niche skills more excusable. However, this skill still does not even guarantee dung pots working, which is laughable. Effluvial Expert nullifies the environmental damage of the Rotten Vale and Rotted region in the Guiding Lands, as well as the damage from acid ponds in the lower areas of the Rotten Vale. It does not do anything against Valhazak's debuff. That is called Effluvia Resistance. This also gets put into the useless tier. You can instead just pick up a nearby torch pot and shoot it at the ground to create a space without effluvium. Also, wearing any mantle completely negates the environmental damage. In the end, it's not even dealing a significant amount. Heatguard negates the heat effects of any damage from standing in lava in the Elder's Recess, the depths of the caverns of El Dorado, and the volcanic region in the Guiding Lands. It also negates the damage taken from Teostra's and Lunastra's heat aura. This goes into the useless tier. Remember, never use a skill to do what a consumable could do as well. Teostra and definitely Lunastra can be very scary, but their heat aura is clearly only a fraction of what makes them dangerous. I will mention that this skill can also be used against Fatalis, as the environmental damage during phases 2 and 3 get negated by this skill. Attack Boost simply increases your raw attack by up to plus 21. Starting with level 4, it also gives a constant plus 5% affinity. Now, this is an important one. I will put this into the upper situational tier. That is because while more attack is good in every single hunt, the skills this is outclassed by are simply too numerous. First of all, you should only ever go for exactly attack boost level 4. Do not go higher and do not use it if you can't reach level 4. As I said in the basic rules, additive increases make little difference, and while a plus 21 is actually quite a lot, it does not justify 7 skill levels. You really only want that extra 5% affinity. Also, you should only go for the skill after going for all other possible options to increase affinity. Finally, there are also exceptions to how useful attack boost is for your damage output. The only one that makes attack boost better is the use of sticky type ammo with your bowguns. This ignores affinity completely, so go ahead and push attack boost to level 7 in that case. The playstyles where this skill does not benefit you will be ignored, since it should already only be used for affinity in the first place, and playstyles that don't benefit from that will be mentioned when talking about the critical eye skill. Defense boost. This is the most basic and straightforward defensive skill, simply raising your defense by up to plus 10%, plus 35 on top. Starting with level 4, it also gives an increase of up to plus 5 in all elemental resistances. First, I will quickly mention that the increase in elemental defense is negligible. Not only is it a minuscule amount, increasing multiple element resistances also has no value. Now, before we can rate this, you first have to understand how the damage you take is calculated. Every move of any monster deals a specific amount of damage. Through your defense, you create a negative multiplier which reduces the damage you take. This multiplier is calculated through an actually quite simple formula. Your defense divided by your defense plus 80. This formula results in an exponential decline in damage reduction the higher your defenses go. To put this into perspective, the general defense of master rank armor starts around 1000. If we take an armor with 1000 defense and equip defense boost level 7, that gives us 1135 defense. That changes our damage reduction multiplier from times 0.92 to times 0.93, meaning we get a single % in additional damage reduction from a level 7 skill. This easily goes into the useless tier. Health boost. This increases your maximum health by up to 50. Your base health is 100 and taking a meal can give you an additional 50, making a total of 200 health possible with this skill. This is easily a contender for the best skill in the game and my personal favorite. There is not a single situation or playstyle where this skill is not a gigantic benefit. This skill gives you a roughly 33% boost in maximum HP, bringing you all the way to double the health if you also take a meal. This will let you live attacks you might have died to before. This makes it so you have to heal less often, letting you deal more damage. At the same time, this skill is the perfect defense as it effectively gives you a massive defense boost. Combined with the health augment on master rank, this will let you go through a majority of the hunts without ever having to heal, once you get comfortable with them. Lastly, you can simply craft the decoration for the skill at the Eldermelder, so there is never an excuse for not using it. Recovery Up has you regenerate up to 30% more health from regenerative consumables, recover ammo, the health regen augmentation, the Hasten Recovery skill, green Kinsect extract and hunting horn melodies. This goes into the lower situational tier. The reasoning for this is solely its effect on health augment. All its other effects are easily rated as useless. Health augment has nothing to do with the skill, but I will mention that I always recommend giving your weapon the level 1 health regen augmentation, as this lets you constantly heal while you hit the monster, and generally health augment should be enough to always keep your health up, but if you feel the need to heal even more, then this is your best option. Recovery speed speeds up the passive healing process of the red portion of your health by up to 300%. This is useless. Your regular recovery speed sits at 1.5 seconds per health point. Since you are using health boost 3, you have up to 200 health. That's 5 minutes for a full health regeneration. With recovery speed level 3, this decreases to 75 seconds. While that is an insane difference, it's still over 1 minute. You can simply use an Astera Jerky to heal the red portion of your health gauge instantly. Also, again, there are many better ways to prevent or reduce or heal damage taken in the first place. Fire Resistance, Water Resistance, Ice Resistance, Thunder Resistance, and Dragon Resistance increase your elemental defense of that element by up to +20 and adds an extra +10 defense from level 3 on. Fire element is used by these monsters. Water element is used by these monsters. Thunder element is used by these monsters. Ice element is used by these monsters. Dragon element is used by these monsters. Deviljho, Bambro, Tigrex, Savage Deviljho, and Brute Tigrex can additionally deal elemental damage depending on what locale they are fought in. The defense portion of this skill has literally no effect. More about that in the defense boost section. Now, elemental damage reduction works like this. Every elemental attack of an opposing monster still deals raw damage. For example, Kirin's regular lightning attack deals 30 raw and 60 thunder. Then, a quest-specific multiplier gets added to get the damage you would receive with 0 defense. Then you perform the typical damage reduction for the overall damage. With 1000 defense, that would result in 69 damage taken. Let's now say you have 20 thunder resistance. That means we now need to reduce the elemental portion of that 69.93 damage by 20%. 60 is 66.6% of 90. 66.6% of 69.93 is 46.573. 20% of that is 9.315. So 69.93 minus that 60.615, then rounded down to 60, is the amount of HP you lose from getting hit. As you can see here, we have roughly a 13% damage reduction from 20 thunder resistance and a move that is 2/3 elemental. I went through all the tougher monsters in the game that use elemental attacks. Of all those monsters, these actually had elemental splits of 50% element or higher. Others had a lot of elemental attacks, but those mostly had splits of less than 1/3 elemental. And some have very few element attacks. What I want you to take away from this is simply that you cannot determine if a monster uses a lot of element from just looking at its moves. Lastly, I want to mention that for every element there exists a mantle which simply gives you an effective 70 resistance for that element for the 3 minutes you wear it. So how do you decide when an elemental resistance is worth it? Well, to make this easier for you, let's just go over the skills. First is Fire Resistance. I put this into the lower situational tier. That is because monsters like Tempered Lunastrat or Tempered Silver Athelos are monsters that are generally difficult to fight, and they have very high elemental splits. However, as I showed on Kirin, which has the highest elemental splits, 20 elemental resistance only reduces your damage by slightly over 10%. That is not bad, but there are better defensive skills that work on any attacks of any monster. Water Resistance joins the previous one in lower situational. That is for the same reasons in case you struggle with Tempered or Arch-Tempered Namiel. Thunder Resistance goes here as well for Tempered Kirin and again for the Namiels. Ice Resistance can be useful against Arch-Tempered Velkhana, so this goes into the same tier as the previous ones. Velkhana does have 50% splits all across the board. And finally we have Dragon Resistance. Savage Deviljho is the only high tier culprit of having good dragon splits. I don't know why you would ever fight Tempered Savage Deviljho, but it exists, I guess. So all these skills end up in the lower situational tier. Blight Resistance reduces the duration of or negates all elemental blights, meaning Fire Blight, Water Blight, Thunder Blight, Ice Blight, and Dragon Blight. Note that Blast Blight is not affected by this. Let me quickly explain what those blights even do. You will be inflicted with a blight if you are hit by any attack of the corresponding element. Having an elemental resistance of 10 reduces the blight's effect time and 20 makes you immune to them. Fire Blight deals 3 HP of recoverable damage every second for 30 seconds. Water Blight reduces stamina regeneration by 25% for 60 seconds. Thunder Blight increases stun buildup on you by times 1.5 and slows down your natural regeneration from stun buildup by times 2 for 60 seconds. Ice Blight doubles instant stamina consumption and triples continuous stamina depletion for 60 seconds. Dragon Blight negates all the elemental damage output and status buildup from your weapon for 60 seconds. Quite a few of these effects really are a big hindrance to your hunter, especially if you depend on your stamina. But all blights can be healed in a matter of seconds by consuming a nullberry. Additionally, Fire Blight can be removed by rolling 3 times. If you actually do find yourself in a situation where you get hit too much by elemental attacks, then it would still be a better option to go for that elemental resistance, as that actually gives you more survivability and eliminates the threat of the blight in the process. Now that I have made that clear, there is actually a scenario where this skill can be helpful, which is why this goes to the lower situational tier. Going for exactly Blight Resistance 2 reduces the duration of all blights to 15 seconds. This also lets you cure those blights with 5 dodge rolls. Why is that important? When paired with the Coalescence skill, this lets you easily activate that skill, which boosts attack, element and status after healing a blight. 5 rolls is not amazing, especially with Ice Blight, but it has its use. But more about that when I cover that. Basically, you want exactly 2 Blight Resistance when combined with that skill. Fire Attack, Water Attack, Ice Attack, Thunder Attack and Dragon Attack increase your elemental attack of that type. Levels 1 to 3 add up to a flat 100, while levels 4 to 6 add up to plus 20% and then add another flat 100. This is the first assortment of skills that will be judged by your weapon types. That is because there are only a few weapon types that actually offensively benefit from elements, and I will split this up between the bowguns and all other weapon types. Of the latter, only the dual blades and bow benefit from this skill. Elemental damage is a multiplicative increase on top of every hit you dish out. This means to really benefit from element, you have to deal a lot of hits in quick succession. From the bowguns, only some light bowguns can benefit from this skill. Elemental ammo works different than explained before. Here, every ammo has an elemental value and a smaller raw value. Only the raw value scales with the weapon you are using. Note that while dragon ammo also works that way, it plays very differently gameplay-wise. Now for all other weapon types, there are just much stronger options that are elementless, so even though they are rather fast hitting, going elementless will still be the better option. Or let me rephrase that. You should simply go for the highest draw regardless of if it has element or not. Just because a weapon has element does not effectively make it an elemental weapon. These skills go into the upper situational tier for the dual blades and bow. They also go into the upper situational tier for the light bowgun. However, you should know that while for dual blades and bow element is the superior choice, for light bowgun it is just one of the powerful choices. Many other ammo types are also very powerful. Additionally, Dragon Attack is not viable for light bowgun unless you are an extremely advanced player. Lastly, I want to say that you should mostly focus on rapid fire elemental ammo. Use these skills depending on what monster you fight. Use fire on these monsters. Use water on these monsters. Use thunder on these monsters. Use ice on these monsters. Use dragon on these monsters. Keep in mind that these ratings assume that you have equally strong weapons for all elements. These ratings will differ if you have stronger versions for certain elements. For all other weapon types, this goes into the useless tier. Again, using a weapon with an element is never a bad thing. You should simply not try to make that the weapon's core damage output. Also, if you do this, do push this all the way to level 6 if you can. Poison Attack, Paralysis Attack, Sleep Attack and Blast Attack increase the status buildup on the monster by up to 30% and adds an extra 10 afterwards. Just like with elemental attacks, monsters are more susceptible towards certain status ailments than others and can even be completely immune. Poison deals a total of up to 520 damage over time, depending on the monster's resistance. Monsters weak to poison are these. And these are immune. Paralysis incapacitates the monster for about 7 seconds. Monsters weak to paralysis are these. And these are immune. Sleep incapacitates the monster until it is hit again or about 40 seconds pass. The first hit on a sleeping monster deals twice the damage. Monsters weak to sleep are these. And these are immune. Blast deals 300 damage upon activation and will focus on the nearest monster's body part that can still be broken. Monsters weak to this are these. And these are immune. For all these ailments counts, whenever a status is procced, the next one will require more build-up as the monster will slowly build up a resistance towards it. Poison Attack and Blast Attack simply go to the useless tier right away. These are still offensive skills, and going for those will never benefit you over other offensive choices. The very same can be said about Paralysis Attack and Sleep Attack. However, those do go to the lower situational tier. The requirements are severe and the benefit not amazing, but they are an option. Obviously, your target should be weak to the status, and you should be in a party of 4 people with paralysis, and in a party with at least one other hard-hitting player if you use sleep. Under those conditions, those 2 ailments are actually beneficial. Additionally, I will mention that you can simply give your Palico a para or sleep ailment weapon, which will result in 1 to 2 procs per quest on solo hunts without sacrificing any damage. Normal shots, piercing shots, and spread/power shots are next. Normal shots increases the damage of normal ammo 1, 2, and 3, and regular shots of the bow by 10% and 20%. Piercing shots increases the damage of pierce ammo 1, 2, and 3, and the bow's dragon piercer move by 10% and 20%. Spread/power shots increases the damage of spread ammo 1, 2, and 3, as well as power shots and the Thousand Dragons move of the bow by 10% and 15%. Normal shots and spread/power shots will go to always useful for the bow, as spamming normal and power shots is not only simple, but also the most efficient way to deal damage with this weapon. All 3 skills go into the upper situational tier for the bowguns. These skills are actually equivalent to the usage tier, if the requirements are met, those obviously being that you use the ammo type in question. However, your target monster should also fit certain criteria. Normal works on pretty much anything that has good shot type hit zones. Pierce should be used on monsters with a wide wingspan or a long body, assuring that most hits of every shot connect. And spread should only be used on monsters you are comfortable fighting while sticking to the body part you want to hit like glue. Also, those parts should be big enough so that all your pellets hit the sweet spot. Poison functionality, para functionality, sleep functionality, and blast functionality let you equip the respective coating on your bow. Refer to the section about the status attack skills to learn their exact effects. These all go into the same tier as their attack counterpart for the exact same reasons. Free element/ammo up. This is 2 skills in one. Either one will be activated depending on your weapon type. Free element activates for all close range weapons and bow. This draws out up to 100% of a weapon's hidden element. You can identify if an element is hidden by it being grayed out and written in brackets. I will put this skill into the useless tier, as simply justifying the usage of element already comes with huge restrictions. Wasting 3 more skill levels is just that, a waste. I will also mention that this skill negates the effects of the non-elemental boost skill if an element is awakened. Ammo up increases your ammunition's clip size for bowguns. If the original size is 4 or less, then it's increased by 1. If the original size is 5 or more, then it's increased by 2. Level 1 adds capacity to normal, pierce, spread, sticky, and cluster 1. Level 2 additionally adds capacity to normal, pierce, spread, sticky, and cluster 2, as well as recovery, poison, paralysis, sleep, and exhaust 1. And level 3 additionally adds capacity to the final level of the mentioned ammo, plus all elemental ammo, slicing, demon armor, and trank ammo. This quickly goes into the always useful tier for the bowguns, as it will have you reload less often, which in turn will result in more damage dealt over a certain time. Also, it's extremely comfortable to use. Note that auto reload makes this skill completely useless for the affected ammo type. Critical Eye. This simply raises your affinity by up to plus 40%. Affinity states the chance with which you deal a critical hit. A critical hit will increase only the raw portion of your attack by 25%. Element does not get increased. This goes into the always useful tier. An increase in affinity is always significantly more valuable than an additive increase in attack power. Obviously, anything over 100% affinity is a waste, as you can't crit more often than always. Also, simply looking at your attack status in the menu does not necessarily give you a faithful representation of your affinity, since skills that activate under certain conditions are ignored. If you really want to find out your effective affinity, you will have to go through your skills and manually add the values together. Now, there are playstyles that either don't benefit from affinity as much, or where affinity is completely useless altogether. Gunlance, shelling, and file explosions of the charge blade cannot crit, meaning affinity will never affect them. However, affinity is still a valid option, as at least with the charged blade you will have to use your main weapon quite often to charge up. Lastly, when using long shelling with the gunlance or sticky type ammo with the bowguns, you can actually completely neglect all affinity boosting skills, as you will never crit. Critical Boost. This skill increases the damage dealt by critical hits from 25% to up to 40%. This skill is another case of upper situational due to technicalities. This moves straight to use it if you build up a sizable amount of affinity that can be boosted. Generally, you want to use this starting around 50 to 60% affinity. Weakness Exploit increases your affinity by up to 30% when attacking a monster's weak spot, plus up to an additional 20% if that body part is tenderized, resulting in an absurd 50% affinity increase with level 3. This belongs in the Use It tier. Not only does this skill give you an insane increase in offense, but it also encourages you to play more optimally by making you attack monster weak points and tenderizing monster parts, meaning this skill will directly and indirectly increase your damage output by a significant amount. You can check monster weak spots in your Hunter's notes. For more detailed information you can also go online. Any monster part with a hit zone value of 45 or higher counts as a weak spot. And thanks to tenderization, you can even create new weak spots. To keep it simple, any part with a hit zone value of 27 or higher is a potential weak spot. Check out the Clutch Claw Boost skills section to find out how to tenderize monster parts more easily. Focus. This does different things for different weapon classes. First, this skill reduces the time to charge certain attacks with the Greatsword, Sword and Shield, Hammer, Gunlance, and Bow by up to 15%. For Greatsword, this goes into the Always Useful tier. The Greatsword has to wait for an opening and then stay in place, making itself vulnerable for the time spent charging. So charging faster will always be beneficial. For Gunlance, this goes into the Upper Situational tier. This one is quite simple. Use this for long shelling Gunlance. Since long shelling requires so little, this is equivalent to the Use It tier for this scenario. For Sword and Shield, Hammer, and Bow, this goes into the Useless tier. Sword and Shield actually benefits from the ability to have a longer charge time to more freely decide when to unleash its attack. The Hammer charges its attack while moving around the monster waiting for an opening. Charging your Hammer faster does nothing to optimize this process. The Bow does not need this, as you can easily and instantly increase your charge level via the charging sidestep. Next, this skill reduces the recharge time of certain aspects by up to 20%. This skill reduces the recharge time of your Kinsect's stamina gauge, and for the light and heavy bowgun it reduces the time necessary to recharge your special ammo, meaning Wyvern Blast for the light bowgun and Wyvern Snipe or Wyvern Heart for the heavy bowgun. For these three weapons, this promptly goes into the useless tier. It's never worth it to buff your Kinsect uptime, as its damage output / support should never take your focus, pun intended. And while special ammo can deal a lot of damage, it's by no means worth wasting a skill on it. Lastly, this skill also speeds up powering the Longsword, Dual Blades, Switch Axe and Charge Blade by up to 20%. It lets you fill the spirit gauge of your Longsword faster. This is useless, as the EI Slash does this better 100% of the time. It also lets you more quickly fill the Demon Mode gauge of your Dual Blades, which is also easily dismissed, as this is already filled very quickly. It also speeds up the process of filling the File gauge of your Switch Axe. This can be useful at first, but is generally outclassed by Power Prolonger. Therefore, I will put this into the lower situational tier. Still always an option if better picks aren't available. And lastly, this skill also lets you charge the Charge Blade's charge gauge faster. So dumb. If you are planning to spam super amped elemental discharges, then level 3 and nothing lower is extremely valuable, as it lets you build up the required charge gauge level in a single 2-attack combo. For every other playstyle, this is useless. Power Prolonger lets some of the weapon types keep their powered up mode for longer. For Longsword, it lets you keep your spirit gauge level for up to 40% longer. This is useless, as you constantly switch between spirit charge levels anyways. For Dual Blades, it extends the duration of Archdemon mode by up to 100%, and is also useless, as attacks performed in Archdemon mode actively deplete your demon gauge, meaning this would never run out by itself. For the Switch Axe, this increases the uptime for your amped state and the buffed axe mode by up to 100%, and this goes into the Always Useful tier, as the process of charging your amped sword mode will always take some time. Keeping this powered up version for double the time is therefore very valuable. This weapon is also not that skill hungry, making this comfort skill perfectly justifiable. For the Charge Blade, this skill increases the time your sword charge, shield charge or power axe mode stays active by up to 40%. This goes into the upper situational tier if you focus on using the power axe mode. Any other playstyle does not benefit from this. This skill keeps your Kinsect buffs up to 40% longer with the Insect Glaive. I put this into useless. All this skill does is reduce the need to regather your Kinsect buffs. While those are extremely important, collecting them will go very quickly once you know where to get them. Additionally, you can increase the uptime of your extracts by gathering only red and white at first, and then gather the orange one right before the red extract runs out to reset the timer, giving you 180 seconds of uptime. Additionally, you can even feed common field type Slinger ammo to your Kinsect to give it the spirit charge. This increases the duration of all extracts by 50%, giving you 270 seconds or 4.5 minutes of uptime. Handicraft increases your sharpness by up to 50 hits. You can identify what this becomes in your weapon's description as the lower bar at the end of your sharpness gauge. Note that this always shows the increase for level 5, so level 1 will give you the first fifth of that section. Now let me explain how sharpness works. Each close range weapon has a sharpness gauge. Higher sharpness has you bounce less often or not at all, and more importantly, is a straight multiplicative damage increase. As you dish out hits with your weapon, your sharpness decreases. How fast your sharpness drops depends on your weapon type. I put this skill into the lower situational tier. This skill should never be used to maintain your sharpness. There are other skills that do that infinitely better. You only ever want to use this skill if it lets you reach a new level of sharpness, since that does result in an overall increase in damage as long as you then also have the means necessary to retain that sliver of new sharpness. If you can't do all that, then this skill is simply not worth it. Critical Draw increases the affinity of your drawing attack by up to 100%. This is completely useless for several reasons. Every single weapon in the game has a lot more damage output if you use its most powerful moves or combos, which never ever synergize with this skill. Additionally, when using a playstyle that benefits from affinity, there is never a reason to not already put your overall affinity towards 100%, making this skill obsolete. Even with Frostcraft, this should never be used. Frostcraft does not mean you constantly sheath your weapon. Now you might think, yes, that's exactly what it means. Let me clearly show the severity of this skill's restrictions. Using only draw attacks means 100% affinity. Using a draw attack every second hit drops the effective affinity by 50%. You do sheath your weapon a lot with Frostcraft, but you sheath it drastically less often than needed to make this skill even worth a thought. Also, no, this does not synergize with Hammer as the power charge nullifies crit draw. Partbreaker deals extra part break damage of up to 30% to breakable monster parts. Note that this skill does not actually increase your damage. I will put this in the farming tier, as this is mainly used to farm specific monster materials. This can very much still make the hunt easier, as some monsters will get weaker with specific body parts damaged, which is why this also goes into the lower situational tier. Body parts can also become weak points when broken, but I do not see that as a reason to use this skill, as that is just another case of sacrificing offensive skills to deal more damage. Talking about that, next is Slugger. This skill increases the amount of stun buildup you inflict with impact type attacks by up to 40%, or even 60% with Slugger Secret, therefore letting you KO monsters quicker. Stun is built up by hitting a monster's head with an impact type attacks. Main users of those are Hammer, Hunting Horn, Charge Blade with impact files, and you cheeky sticky users. There are other weapons such as the Sword and Shields and Lance's shield attacks, the Insect Glaive's blunt Kinsect, and the Bowgun's melee attack. You will also deal impact damage with any and all attacks while wearing the Impact Mantle. Monsters specifically susceptible to stun are the ones shown now. These monsters are immune. This too has the monster build up a resistance towards stun, meaning consecutive procs will be harder to achieve. Downing the monster in any way is extremely valuable as it lets you deal damage for free and without any risk involved. However, this is another offender of using a mediocre offensive skill to deal more damage. And due to resistance buildup, you should not expect more than 3 to 4 KOs on a 15-minute hunt regardless on if you use Slugger or not. So this skill generally belongs in the useless tier. However, as all the other crowd control skills, it does move up to the lower situational tier in online play, as other players benefiting from this does make up for your lost damage. For Sticky, it's also fair to mention that Slugger is also in the lower situational tier, as that playstyle does not require many skills, letting you slot in some mediocre skills for just a bit more offense. This has been the first skill where skill secrets come into play. I'll just quickly mention again that I go over those at the end of this episode. Stamina Thief makes your attacks exhaust the monster up to 40% or even 60% faster. Note that exhaust is only dealt by impact type attacks on the monster's head. In concept, this sounds like a great cheese method, but sadly it does not have any significant effect. I did multiple hunts with Stamina Thief level 5 against Master Rank Elder Dragons, which all took around 15 minutes, and when we add together every instance of a target getting exhausted, we will get a great sum of exactly 0. Therefore, it goes into the useless tier. Next, we have Master Mounter and Airborne. Master Mounter increases the amount of mount buildup you deal with aerial attacks and makes it easier to topple mounted monsters. This goes into the lower situational tier. You should generally not force your playstyle to revolve around aerial combat. The only reason this can be considered useful is because it can be beneficial in multiplayer, it's just a single level skill, and it pairs well with other skills, like Airborne. Airborne has you deal 30% more damage with jumping attacks, and this skill gets the same rating as Master Mounter for the same reasons. Note that stronger jumping attacks don't necessarily let you mount the monster faster. Latent Power increases your affinity and reduces stamina consumption by up to 50% each once any of two conditions is met. Either you take 180 damage or you stay in combat for 5 minutes. With Latent Power Secret, this can be pushed further to 60% affinity and lowering the required damage taken to 130. This is a stupid skill with an extremely underwhelming effect from the secret bonus, and will be promptly put into the useless tier. For such requirements, the granted benefits are a massive disappointment. Agitator increases your attack by up to 20 and affinity by up to 10% while you are in combat with an enraged monster. This gets increased to a potential 28 attack and 20% affinity increase with Agitator's secret active. This skill easily goes into the always useful tier, as my recommended playstyle always has you fighting against enraged monsters anyways. That is because when a monster is not enraged, you should always wall slam it, and a monster will become enraged after either 1 or 2 wall slams, meaning you will always play with this buff active. Peak Performance increases your attack by up to 20 points when your health is full. I will put this into the lower situational tier. While nothing extraordinary, the buff is adequate for the activation requirement. Activating this also gets a lot easier with Health Augment, making this an option in case you don't have anything better to put on your set. Just never let this skill give you the feeling that you need to stop fighting and heal. Just let Health Augment do its thing while you do your thing. Heroics increases your attack by up to 15% and defense by up to 100 points when you fall below 35% health. This gets pushed to a potential increase of 40% attack and 150 defense when using the Heroics secret set bonus. The increase in defense is completely pointless, as you will get one-shot by all strong attacks with this little health anyways. The offensive increase on level 7 is completely ridiculous, but this still goes straight to useless, as I would never recommend this skill for newcomers. While this skill is very powerful, it should be reserved to speedrunners and adrenaline junkies. Also, requiring 7 levels is kind of nuts as well. Fortify increases your attack by 10% and defense by 15% the first 2 times you faint during a quest or expedition, resulting in a 20% attack increase and a 30% defense increase. I tested it, and the first buff does not get taken into consideration when applying the second one. This is still extremely powerful for a single level skill. Remember, to get this much attack from Heroics, you would need 6 levels and less than 35% health. I hope this puts into perspective how strong this skill is. The only reason this does not go into the usage tier is because I would never encourage you to faint on purpose, meaning you do still waste a single level with optimal play. However, whenever you are in the Guiding Lands, this skill immediately goes up to the usage tier, as you can feint as much as you want there, so you can just feint twice before starting the hunt and set up some crazy offense. This is probably the strongest skill in the game related to its cost. Resentment increases your attack by up to plus 25 when you have a red portion in your health gauge. I put this into the useless tier. While you can reliably activate this skill under certain circumstances, I still would never recommend a skill that requires you to get damaged to a casual player audience. And while skills like that do get placed higher occasionally, this one is neither cost effective nor synergizes well with other skills. Resuscitate increases evasion and reduces stamina consumption when afflicted with any status such as any blight, poison, etc. I want to go into evasion when we talk about the first real evasion skill, so for now, just remember that this skill, when active, grants the effects of Evade Window level 5. I put this into the lower situational tier as I have very mixed feelings about this. First, to get afflicted with a status ailment you have to get damaged, which generally is a big no in this tier list. However, you will get hit every now and then regardless. And this skill is just a single level, which is also very powerful at that. So I have come up with 3 potential scenarios where this skill is a useful addition. First are monsters that inflict Water Blight or Ice Blight. Those blights only hurt your stamina, which gets cancelled out by the reduced stamina depletion of this skill. The final situation is fighting a monster using Dragon Blight, if you are using an elementalist weapon, as Dragon Blight won't do anything to you in that case. Also, no, this sadly does not stack with Evade Window. Horn Maestro lengthens the melee effects played by the hunting horn by up to 50%. It also extends the effects of the extended health recovery, max stamina up plus recovery, and elemental effectiveness up effects when using echo marks by specific amounts. This is a no-brainer for hunting horn users and goes into the usage tier. Once you learn how to play the hunting horn more optimally, the skill will decrease in usefulness, as your optimal damage output has you play the songs constantly as you attack the monster anyways. However, the hunting horn has no other specifically required skill, and this is also extremely comfy for beginners and advanced players alike. Capacity Boost increases the amount of shells for your gun lance and the amount of files for your charge blade by 1. It additionally increases the shield charge timer by 30 seconds but can surpass a total of 3 minutes if paired with skills like Power Prolonger. This is not only convenient but also increases your damage output, as you will have to reload less often with your gun lance. And with the charge blade you will have to either recharge less often when using your Power X mode, or you simply deal more damage when spamming super amped elemental discharges. And lastly, this is only a single level skill, therefore this goes into use it for those 2 weapon types. Special Ammo Boost increases the damage dealt by your bowgun's special ammo and your bow's Dragon Piercer and 1000 Dragons moves by 10% and 20%. For light bowgun this goes into always useful, as the Wyvern Blast is the only one of these options that offer rather frequent usage and good damage output. For the heavy bowgun this goes into the useless tier. Both its options for special ammo are very powerful if used right, but simply don't come close to the benefit you get by simply boosting your other damage sources. Lastly, this also belongs in useless for the bow, as spamming the Dragon Piercer is always and completely outclassed by simply spamming power shots. Artillery increases the damage dealt by your gun lance shells and Wyvern Fire move, your Charge Blade impact file attacks, and your Wyvern and Sticky type ammo by up to 30%. It also decreases recharge time for the Wyvern Fire move of the gun lance by up to 50%. With the Artillery Secret skill, this attack increase can be pushed to 50% and the cooldown can be reduced by up to 70%. This is extremely valuable when using gun lance, a charge blade with impact files, or you focus on sticky type ammo. Therefore this goes into use it for the gun lance and into the upper situational tier for the charge blade and light bowgun. Keep in mind that the latter are on par with the use it tier when the requirements are met. Heavy artillery increases the damage dealt by cannons, ballista and the roaming ballista by 50% and 100%. This obviously goes into the useless tier, as only about 1% of the fights even have access to these. And in 90% of these scenarios they are also not recommended to use. Basically, only use this if you are fighting Arch-Tempereds or Amectros with high rank gear, or on your opening set against Fatalis. Marathon Runner, Constitution and Stamina Surge are the 3 most common skills used for stamina management, but before I go over them, I want to first go over the effects of an item called Dash Juice. This consumable item reduces all stamina consumption by 25% for 4 minutes. You can easily obtain this from crafting it at the Elder after progressing the story. Then we also have the food skill effect called Feline Black Belt. This reduces all stamina consumption by 20% until you faint. I will take these 2 into consideration when going over the next 2 skills, since stamina depletion reduction caps at 50%, which you can quite easily reach with all these options. Marathon Runner reduces stamina depletion that happens over time, and Constitution reduces stamina depletion that happens instantly. However, Stamina Surge speeds up stamina recovery regardless of how it was lost. Now that we know their basic effects, it's time to compare them between each other. Marathon Runner reduces stamina depletion that happens over time by up to 50%. This affects general sprinting, the cost of demon mode on the dual blades, charging with your hammer, the Power Guard, Counter Claw and Dash Attack of the lance, and charging your shots with the bow. As you might have already figured out, you never want to max out this skill simply because we have the option to use Dash Juice. Since the benefits cap out at 50%, Marathon Runner 2 combined with Dash Juice is your best option unless you get Feline Black Belt, in which case you already go to 45% with Dash Juice. Don't even use Marathon Runner at all in that case, unless you are most likely going to die. Now, in which scenario would Marathon Runner even be used in the first place? For dual blades, this goes into the lower situational tier because while it surely is comfortable to have, it is easily outclassed by Stamina Surge. Combined with the other restrictions, you should only ever use this if you don't have access to better options. For all other weapon types, this goes into the useless tier. Charging your hammer and bow is the core part of the weapon, but the hammer can easily handle charging for some time and replenishes stamina while performing the charge attack itself, and the bow simply skips charging by using the charging sidestep. Any other weapon revolves only slightly, if at all, around the mentioned moves in the first place. Constitution reduces stamina depletion that happens instantly by up to 50%. This affects general dodging, the shoulder tackle and guard of the greatsword, the foresight slash of the longsword, the backhop and guard of the sword and shield, the evade shot of the dual blades, the guard of your lance, the guard of your gun lance, the wild swings of the switch axe, the guard of the charge blade, any aerial movement of the insect glaive, the evade reload mod for the light bowgun, the shield mod for the heavy bowgun, and the charging sidestep on the bow. Again, combining this with Dash Juice removes the need for anything above level 3, and Dash Juice plus Feline Black Belt removes the need of anything above level 1, if you are sure that you won't fade. First, I will mention that I never recommend this for guard. Both Stamina Surge and guard specific skills are a better choice for that. Now for bow, this still goes to the upper situational tier simply because you can really burn through your stamina extremely quickly. Of course, you still never want to go beyond the mentioned levels. For the light bowgun, this goes into the lower situational tier. This is only ever an option if you are using the evade reload mod on low clip sized ammunition like sticky type ammo. This is still outclassed by Stamina Surge. For every other weapon, this is useless as their affected moves are not their focus. Now, lastly, we have Stamina Surge. The usefulness of Stamina Surge is not directly impacted by Dash Juice, but using less stamina of course indirectly reduces the need of stamina replenishment. That said, I generally rate this the strongest stamina skill as it is all-encompassing, meaning this skill is useful on stamina-depending weapons regardless of how stamina is used, and it's additionally also only 3 levels. Let's start at the bottom. I put this into the lower situational tier for lance. The guard skill is always a better option for guarding, but this is better than nothing. Also, other guarding weapons are ignored as the guard is not their focus. The light bowgun joins the lance in this tier. This is for the same reason as stated for Constitution. Note that this should be used over Constitution in that case if possible. Finally, this goes into the upper situational tier for dual blades and bow for the same reason. For both weapons, the bow much more so, stamina simply plays a big role, and having one skill that helps with this is very valuable. Leap of Faith enables you to perform the all-powerful, invincibility-granting Superman dive in any direction while in combat, and even extends the distance covered by this. This goes into the useless tier as that move is never meant to be played offensively. If you need to Superman dive, it does not matter in which direction you go. Hunger Resistance reduces the rate of maximum stamina depletion or negates that effect completely, unless you are in a cold environment. This takes on the role of consumables that can easily restore your maximum stamina, and therefore this skill goes into the useless tier. Evade Window gives you more iframes when evading. But what are iframes, I hear you ask? Iframe stands for Invulnerability Frame. Basically, whenever you perform a dodge roll or similar actions, you have a few fractions of a second in which you cannot get hit. That is why in my game footage you can sometimes see me practically phase through attacks unscathed. Now, a regular dodge has a window of a little over 1/6 of a second. If you level evade window to its maximum, that gets doubled to over 1/3 of a second. This might not sound like much, but it really makes a great difference. But when it comes to rating this skill, I'm honestly unsure where to put this. Personally, I think this is an amazing skill, but it requires quite a bit of experience to benefit from, so I will only put this into the upper situational tier. This still lets you play a lot more offensively, but it also varies in usefulness depending on weapon type and playstyle, which to me justifies this placement. Evade Extender simply increases your evade distance by up to 1.4 times the distance, and is perhaps the more casual version of Evade Window. I will rate this the same as Evade Window. Other than that skill, this one lets you get away from the monster quicker. I do not recommend using both skills, as Evade Window is meant for aggressive play and benefits from the ability of precise movement, while Evade Extender doesn't really care about precise, it only cares about safety. Next are Guard and Guard Up. Guard reduces knockback by up to +30 and stamina cost by up to 50% when guarding. What does the +30 mean exactly? Basically, there are 3 types of knockback: small, medium and large. As long as you have enough stamina, you will block the attack but might experience different levels of knockback. The guard of every shield has a certain threshold of how much damage is required to push you into the next knockback level. For example, the Sword and Shield will experience large knockback from attacks that will only inflict a small knockback to a Lance's shield. The +30 I mentioned there is kind of meaningless and only makes sense in relation to this spreadsheet. Basically, the guard skill increases the damage that has to be dealt to your shield to reach the next level of knockback. I also want to quickly mention that guarding will always inflict chip damage through medium or large knockbacks, so increasing your guard indirectly reduces the chip damage as well. This skill goes into the always useful tier for Lance and any heavy bowgun with a level 3 or higher shield modification, as those are the strongest shields in the game, and if you are using these, your goal is to block so you can keep up constant pressure and stay aggressive. You can also stop at guard level 3 to get the +20 threshold if you don't want to put too many skills into block. The Gun Lance also has the best shield in the game, but is a lot more skill hungry, meaning it has a ton of competition. It also can't use the shield as aggressively as the Lance can. Therefore I rate the guard skill useless for this weapon. And finally, the Charge Blade. This weapon already has the ability to increase its guarding capabilities by making use of its shield charge and guard points. When knowing how to perform those actions, you can effectively reach guard 5 with just a single level of guard. Therefore, I put this into the upper situational tier for the Charge Blade. This too can be a very skill-hungry weapon, but a single level is not that hard to fit in. Guard Up is next, and now it's time to mention that there are some moves that simply cannot be blocked. This skill lets you block all those previously unblockable attacks. Guard Up goes into the lower situational tier for the Lance, as your Power Guard naturally activates this skill. So try to learn what attacks are blockable and use Power Guard for everything else. The Gun Lance also goes here. Yes, I just said the Gun Lance is not made to primarily block, but it does still have an incredible shield that can be made even better by a single level skill. Still, the Gun Lance is very skill hungry, so only use this if absolutely necessary. For Charge Blade and Shielded Heavy Bowgun, this goes into the upper situational tier, as blocking is part of their general flow. For all weapons I did not mention, both guard related skills go into the useless tier. Quick Sheath lets you sheath your weapon more quickly. The effect of this varies for all weapons, but it generally reduces your sheath time by something between 15 to 30%. This goes into the useless tier regardless of your weapon's type though. You might argue that there are some scenarios where sheathing and Superman diving away is a valid scenario, so let's quickly go over that. The weapons with a sheath time of 1.5 seconds or higher are Lance and Gun Lance with 1.5 seconds, Switch Axe and Charge Blade with 1.7 seconds, and Heavy Bowgun with 2.1 seconds. All of them can also prevent incoming damage by just blocking, except the Switch Axe. And even then, I would always recommend just using more defensive skills, as those always benefit you opposed to this very niche skill. Wide Range transfers all the effects of your consumables to all of your nearby allies. This goes into the upper situational tier. This skill is basically useless and should generally not be used, so why is it that high on the list? Wide Range should only be used when getting hard carried through the game. Standing away from the fight and spamming healing is never recommended during general play, so please only do it with friends who agree to help you out. In that case, make sure to reach level 5 and combine it with skills like Free Meal to push your consumable usage to the limit. This skill does not transfer the effects of Item Prolonger or Recovery Up, unless the recipient is also using that skill themselves. Item Prolonger extends the effect duration of items that grant temporary effects by 10, 25 and 50%. Those items include Energy Drink, Cool Drink, Hot Drink, Immunizer, Astera Jerky, Dash Juice, Might Seed, Might Pill, Adamant Seed, Adamant Pill, Demon Powder and Hard Shell Powder. It also extends the duration of Protective Polish and works with the effects granted by the Mushroomancer skill. This goes into the lower situational tier simply and only because of Protective Polish when using a weapon that heavily relies on sharpness management. For everything else, this is rated useless, as simply using another one of these items takes just a few seconds. Additionally, all these items can either be easily farmed at the Botanical Research Center or bought at the Elder. and if you run out of items during a hunt, you can simply just restock at any base camp. Free meal grants you a 25% chance to be able to use a consumable without actually consuming it. When making use of the free meal secret, this chance gets pushed a lot higher to 75%. Generally, this is useless as you never need more healing consumables. That is because 1. You already have access to infinite consumables by accessing the base camp, and 2. Once you are using health augment, you will rarely use consumables in the first place. This skill does still go into the lower situational tier, as this should be used on online support sets, and it can also be a great skill early on during your journey through the game, and it also is just a single level skill. Speed eating speeds up your item consumption by up to 38% for quick use items and up to 64% for all other consumables, and this goes into the uses here. As I mentioned a few times already, health recovery in the later stages of the game mainly come from health augment, so this skill barely even does anything, and if you do end up healing, wasting a skill on this is not ever worth it. Next, let's go out of order once again and talk about speed sharpening and protective polish. Speed sharpening speeds up the sharpening process by up to 75%. Protective polish prevents any sharpness loss for 60 seconds after sharpening. The latter is also affected by item prolonger, making it 90 seconds at max. These effects both are great, especially for faster hitting weapon types, as you will have to sharpen a lot. But which one is better? Well, let's set the stage for a proper comparison. Let's say you use 60 sharpness per minute. We now compare 10 hits of sharpness with 60 hits of sharpness. The length of sharpening can easily be represented by the cycles of its animation. Speed Sharpening 3 performs 1 cycle per minute, and Protective Polish performs 3 cycles every second minute, meaning 1.5 cycles per minute. In this case, Speed Sharpening 3 is slightly better, although you could even say that it's worse here, since it's a 3-level skill outperforming a single-level skill by not even close to 3 times the benefit. If we then go down to 10 hits of sharpness, we get 6 cycles per minute with Speed Sharpening and 18 cycles in 7 minutes with Protective Polish, which becomes roughly 2.57 cycles per minute. That is obviously a huge win for Protective Polish. Now, to be fair, I only left this bit in to show how outclassed Speed Sharpening was already, but you actually never want to use this skill, even if you have no better options. That is because of an item called Wetfish Fin Plus. This item works like your Whetstone, but with a natural Speed Sharpening level 3 and only a 10% chance of being consumed after usage. This can also easily and quickly be farmed in the Master Rank event quest A Fish to Whet Your Appetite. Protective Polish easily goes into the always useful tier for all fast weapon types. Additionally, it does also go into the lower situational tier for Gunlance. While this weapon is not as fast, it still loses a lot of sharpness quickly due to shelling. Gunlance is quite the skill-hungry weapon, so only go for this if you're already using all better options or you can't go for those. Bombardier increases the damage dealt by any kind of barrel bombs by up to 30%. If you're using the Bombardier secret, this gets pushed to a maximum of plus 50%. This would only be used at all when placing mega barrel bombs to wake up a sleeping monster. You might argue that this is actually very useful, and to a degree it really is, since I do recommend giving your cat a sleep element weapon and you will get around 1 to 2 sleeps per hunt. You can then set 2 bombs at once, and the first will deal double the damage, making them hit for 1318 damage with Bombardier level 3 and 1521 damage with level 5. This is quite a bit, but keep in mind that the more harder hitting weapons can quite comfortably reach those numbers as well. Weaker weapons won't even come close to this much damage, but if you paid attention, then you know by now that you should never sacrifice generally useful offensive skills to deal more damage. Therefore, this simply goes into the useless tier. If you can't make use of sleep, then don't use it. Use paralysis instead. Mushroomancer is quite the interesting skill that lets you consume certain mushrooms for effects of other consumables. Blue mushroom becomes potion, toadstool becomes immunizer, nitro shroom becomes demon drug, parashroom becomes armor skin, mandragora becomes max potion, devil's blight becomes dash juice, and excite shroom randomly grants one of the prior effects. Now this is quite interesting. While it does give the very powerful dash juice effect, that item can also just be bought at the Elder, so this skill goes into the useless here. Master Fisher increases the time window to catch fish and lowers the required inputs when catching large fish. This skill goes into the Gathering tier. While this is certainly niche even throughout the Gathering skills, farming Wetfish for Wetfish Fins Plus is something you might find yourself doing. Barbecue Master makes it easier to roast rare steak and well done steak. Pro Transporter increases movement speed while transporting items such as Monster X and also lets you safely land from slightly higher drops. And Carving Pro negates minor knockbacks while you are carving monsters. All these skills go into the useless tier. Yes, Pro Transporter is also in here, as there is not even a single transport quest that can't be completely cheesed with the Ghillie Mantle. Also note that you can easily get rations at the canteen by using the Oven Roast feature. Master Gatherer speeds up the gathering animation and prevents knockbacks while gathering. Honey Hunter lets you collect 1 extra honey from honeycombs. Botanist lets you gather 1 extra item from herbs, fruits, nuts, seeds, insects, and mushrooms. Geologist lets you gather 1 extra time at bone piles mining outcrops and local gathering spots. Scholar doubles the rate at which you increase research levels for monsters at ecological research. Note this skill does not increase the amount of investigations you obtain. Entomologist makes the corpses of Hornator and Vespoid stay intact and coverable more often. Forager's Luck increases the spawn rate of rare gathering points, and Detector marks those on the map. All these skills go into the Gather tier, as they are all great for farming specific things but are 100% useless otherwise. Yes, I know you can simply shoot Hornator and Vespoid with stones, which also guarantees them leaving a coverable corpse behind, but have you tried killing Mastering Hornators with stones? It takes forever. I also have to mention that intentionally or not, the Geologist skill will let you pick up all drop monster materials in the Guiding Lands twice, while just being at level 1. So always use Geologist level 1 when farming for augment materials. Divine Blessing has a chance to reduce the damage you take from a monster's attack. It generally goes up to 25% chance to negate 50% of the damage taken. When using the Divine Blessing secret bonus, this goes up to a 40% chance to negate 60% of the damage taken. This is the second best defensive skill in the game and just barely missed going into the usage tier. That has 2 reasons. First, it activates randomly and therefore you can't really rely on it. Second, to get this skill to level 5 you have to use the Divine Blessing secret set bonus, which does restrict you in the armor pieces you can choose. Palico Rally increases the attack and defense of your Palico by up to 25% each. Sadly, the fact that this is a 5-stage skill makes it not even worth considering. You really should just use your cat for status ailments and its Palico gadget. Maximum Might increases your affinity by up to 30% if you don't deplete your stamina for 5 seconds. If you are using Maximum Might secret, then this goes to 40% and activates as soon as your stamina fills up. This quickly goes into the useless tier, as actions like evading are core mechanics that should not be given up at any cost for casual play. Additionally, there are just so many other skills that increase your affinity that are better. Slinger Capacity probably has the most underwhelming flavor text compared to what it actually does. This skill gives you more Slinger ammo from picking them up and also restricts how many are fired with a Slinger Burst or Flint Shot. The reason this is actually worth a thought is the fact that you don't consume all your Slinger ammo when performing a Flint Shot. That means with a single level of this skill you can Flint Shot a monster twice with a single pickup of Stone, Redbit, Scatternut, Torchpot, Puddlepot, Bright Moss, and Crystal Burst. To be fair, this still doesn't really justify putting it higher than the useless tier. However, all this does not even include the weapon-specific benefits yet. The Greatsword can go from the base charge right into the true charge when buffed with a Slinger Burst. This is amazing, but already only uses a single ammunition, so the skill is useless here. The Longsword can chain Slinger Bursts into certain combos, but that is very situational and only consumes a single ammo. Sword and Shield can combo a Slinger Burst directly into a Perfect Rush. This also only consumes a Slinger ammo and therefore doesn't really benefit this. The same counts for the Evade Shot of the Dual Blades and the Guard Shot of the Lance. The Gun Lance has the Wormstake Blast. While guarding, you can load Slinger ammo into your barrel. Performing the Wormstake cannon move will then lodge a device into the monster which will deal extra damage every time it's hit by a shelling type attack. This device will last longer depending on what and how much Slinger ammo was loaded into the barrel. This is just a nice bonus with optimal play, but can be very comfortable to use, especially since you might have to try several times before managing to place this on a favorable hit zone. Yes, this move ignores hit zone values just like regular shelling, but you still want it on good hit zones, since you will be focusing the implanted monster part with all your attacks, including your slicing attacks. This goes into the upper situational tier. The weapon is very skill hungry, but you can use this if you don't have the better skills, if it still fits, or if you care more about comfort. The Charge Blade can follow up a few of its attacks with Slinger Bursts, but they all only consume a single ammo and are very situational, so the skill is useless for this weapon. With the Insect Glaive, you can charge up your Kinsect by feeding it some Slinger ammo. This does last some time, making it unnecessary to increase the Slinger capacity. The bow uses Slinger ammo to perform the Thousand Dragons move, and this does consume all Slinger ammo. However, as mentioned before, this move really is nothing more than a gimmick. There are situations where you can use it, but you should not waste skills on it. Stealth increases the likelihood of monsters disengaging from combat. At least it says it does. I have tested this, and the difference has been so lackluster that I am honestly unsure if this skill actually does anything. I have been chased by monsters through an entire locale with and without this skill. Do not use it. Flinch-free prevents getting knocked back by small attacks such as a monster grazing you with its foot or longsword players simply existing. Regardless of that, depending on what weapons you use, you might want to use level 1 of this skill in multiplayer. Therefore I put this in the lower situational tier for online play. But wait, there's more. This skill has a unique effect when using the Insect Glaive. Each level of flinch-free grants 1 level of Earplugs, Windproof and Tremor Resistance while having all 3 extracts. Not that it raises this skill's rating. Scoutfly Range Up extends the radius in which Scoutflies operate. This actually goes into the rare detrimental tier, as not only is this skill unnecessary, but it also actually makes it more difficult to determine what is close to you. Speed Crawler increases movement speed while crouching. While this has clearly no use in combat, this skill can actually be used to save time on farming runs, since many campsites have a crawl space you have to crouch through. So I almost put this into the Gather tier. However, this skill only appears on 4 pieces of equipment, which are all vastly outclassed by other alternatives for gathering sets. Jumpmaster prevents knockbacks while being airborne. This is the same effect as flinch-free level 1, but restricted to air movement, and without the Insect Glaive bonus. There is no reason to ever use this over flinch-free. Survival Expert lets you restore health from activating Spore Puffs and consuming Wiggly Litchi. There are 15 areas with Wiggly Litchi in them, and there are 8 areas with Spore Puffs in them. There are 113 areas just throughout the 7 main locales. That alone should be enough to show you how random this skill is. Aquatic/polar mobility makes it easier to move around in deep water, deep snow and deep sand, and even gives you evade window level 4 at max level and under the specified conditions. Here's a great tip on how to deal with the situations more easily. Don't go there. There are 3 areas in total throughout 2 locales in the entire game where you will encounter deep water or deep snow, and the only monsters you fight there are Duratodus, Beartodus and maybe the occasional Bambro. You could argue putting this higher for the fight against Charo Eshwalda, but here I argue going for general defensive skills is always better. Cliffhanger decreases stamina consumption when evading while clinging to walls or ivy. It also reduces the amount of stamina consumed when moving between monster parts while clutched onto a monster. It does not reduce your constant stamina consumption while clinging onto the monster though. While the second effect is at least not completely useless, it is still never worth using a skill for. Just don't clutch onto a monster when you're low on stamina. 150 stamina should always be enough. Blindsider increases the range of the blinding radius from flesh pots or flesh flies. I have no idea how to test this, and so to bypass this I'll simply point out that there is no piece of mastering equipment which features this skill. Therefore this wouldn't even be up for consideration. Effluvia Resistance decreases or prevents effluvial buildup, which is the debuff inflicted by Valhazak. While this is only useful at all against Valhazak and Black Veil Valhazak, I still put this into the lower situational tier as it certainly can make those fights more bearable. As an interesting side note, this can actually also be inflicted by Deviljho, Bambro, Tigrex and Savage Deviljho when fighting them in the Rotten Vale or Rotted region of the Guiding Lands. Scenthound increases the rate at which your Scoutfly level increases when gathering monster tracks by 50%. While the Scoutfly level can give you useful information, such as when the monster is close to death, it never justifies using a skill for that. Tool Specialist reduces the recharge time of your specialized tools by up to 30%. This even goes to a 50% decrease when making use of the Tool Specialist secret bonus. This goes into the upper situational tier, as this is always a great pick if you do use your specialized tools, since they greatly benefit you during basically any hunt. This will also increase in value the longer the hunt takes. Affinity Sliding increases your affinity by 30% for 30 seconds after you start sliding. This goes into useless. That is because this relies on slopes being present in your fight, and there are simpler methods of increasing your affinity. and again you want to always be as close to 100% as possible anyways. Elderseal Boost increases the Elderseal rating of your weapon by 1 level. Every weapon with a dragon element has an Elderseal property. This property cannot go beyond high, and this skill cannot grant the Elderseal to a weapon that doesn't already have it. The Elderseal property is also found on dragon pods, and all Slinger Bursts and the 1000 Dragons move performed with them, the Dragon Echo Wave of the Hunting Horn, Dragon Element Kinsects, and the Dragon type ammo. Here the property is simply increased by roughly anything between 25 to 50%, except the Dragon Element Kinsect, which never changes its Elderseal rating. Additionally, I also want to mention that using the Dragonproof Mantle increases your Elderseal properties even further, and automatically makes the Elderseal rating of weapons go to high, which makes this skill do nothing for weapons under those conditions. Hitting an Elder Dragon with these weapons/attacks eventually results in suppressing their powers. Against Kirin it removes its lightning armor. Against Nergigante and Lunar Nergigante it removes their black spikes. Against Teostra and Lunastra it deactivates their fiery aura. Against Kushala Daora it switches off its wind aura. Against Valhazak and Blackveil Valhazak it dissipates their effluvial aura. Against Synergiva it reduces the time of its amped up state. Against Velkhana it shatters its ice armor. Against Namiel it removes its electrical charge and drains her when fully charged and glowing. Against Safi'jiiva it leads to the monster consuming more of the area's energy, which leads to its resources running out faster. And against Doramectros, Shara Ishvala, Elatrion, Fatalis, and Behemoth it has no effect. This skill is completely useless against the majority of the mentioned monsters, as simply dealing more damage will also knock them out of their charged state in most cases. This skill actually goes into the gather/farming tier, because it can be valuable when farming Safi'jiiva for its weapons. Intimidator reduces or nullifies the likelihood of entering combat with small monsters. This does not work on Vespite, Hornetor, and Raphinos, as those never actually enter combat with you. Also, small monsters will still enter combat with you if you deal damage to them. This goes into the gather tier, as this is actually quite useful when you just want to go about your day and gather some stuff. Boat Charge Plus increases the maximum boat charge level by 1. This easily goes into the Use It tier for all bow users, as it increases your overall damage output regardless of the bow and playstyle you are using, and only requires a single skill level. You can even craft the Mighty Bow Jewel 2 at the Eldermelder. Mind's Eye/Ballistics is another skill that has 2 different effects for close range and long range weapons. Mind's Eye prevents close range weapons from bouncing off a monster's body part and goes into the Useless tier, as there is never a reason that justifies bouncing off a monster. Either your sharpness is too low or you are attacking the wrong body part. The Ballistics skill effectively increases the critical range of bowgun ammo and bow shots. To be more specific, this skill reduces the distance before reaching critical range by 75%, and also takes the first 20% of the distance between critical range and maximum range and converts that into critical range as well. This almost guarantees you being in critical range for all ranged attacks. However, it is mainly used for Pierce type ammo, as critical range for that ammo type starts 10 meters away. That is also why this skill goes into the upper situational tier. It is not recommended for any ammo type other than Pierce and maybe normal. Critical range for every other ammo either starts at 0 distance or does not matter. For the bow, normal shots enter critical range after 3 meters, and every other arrow type enters critical range at 0 distance. Non-elemental boost boosts your raw attack by 5% if your weapon does not have any element. This even works on bowguns, but only on those that do not have access to any elemental ammo whatsoever. This goes into the upper situational tier for all weapons this can be used on. This is a slightly stronger attack boost level 4 in a single level. Additionally, you can easily craft decoration with this skill at the Eldermelder. Keep in mind that the free element/ammo up skill negates this ability if you have a hidden element on your weapon. Guts. This skill lets you survive an attack that would normally kill you once, and only if you are above a certain amount of health that is marked on your health bar. Do note that you will be left with 1 HP, so you will still die if you are on fire, poisoned, inside an attack's AoE, standing in lava, etc. Regardless, this skill is really good as it effectively gives you 1 extra card per quest with a few restrictions. Additionally, this skill only needs 1 level, so where does this great skill go? Straight to Useless tier. There is no decoration and not a single armor piece in the game that simply gives you this skill. Well, there is the Gutsy charm, which does give you this skill, but sacrificing your charm slot for a singular level is never acceptable. This skill also comes with the Soulfire Blaze weapons, but these are easily outclassed by countless other weapons. Finally, you can get this as a set bonus from some armor sets, and while the Kulftroth Master Rank armor set is not even that bad, you would never choose it for just this skill. So what do? Easy, just eat for Feline Moxie at the canteen. It's the exact same effect, and the healthy player always has a chance for granting this skill. Hasten Recovery heals you as you deal damage to a monster. Think of it as a counter. To activate the skill, you need to reach a count of 5. Hitting the monster adds 1. After adding 1, you can't add another 1 for 0.72 seconds. And the counter resets if it hasn't been increased in the last 5 seconds. The amount of damage healed varies for each weapon type, ranging from 5 to 20 HP. This skill can only be acquired through the Nergigante armor set bonus or by using the Soulfire Rune weapons. This goes into the lower situational tier. This skill is basically a much weaker health regen augment. While those two do stack, I much more recommend using the Recovery Up skill when possible. Razor Sharp / Spare Shot is yet another skill that works differently for close range and long range weapons. Razor Sharp works for close range weapons and cuts all sharpness loss in half, which is an amazing skill. This quite easily goes into the useless tier. That has 2 reasons. First of all, the skill is easily outclassed by better options such as Protective Polish or using Wedgefish Femme Plus. Additionally, the only way to obtain this is through high rank armor, a charm, or the Soulfire Styx weapons. Using a charm for just a single skill should not be an option unless you know for certain that everything else with high priority is on your set. Spare Shot grants a 20% chance to not use up any ammo after shooting with a bowgun, or to not use up any coating when having one equipped on your bow. This is actually a really good skill, which does justify putting it at least slightly higher than useless. But keep in mind, there is a skill which is literally the same as this, but better. Critical Element and Critical Status are next. Normally, when landing a critical hit, that only increases the raw portion of the attack, meaning you never deal more elemental damage with higher affinity. These skills change that. Critical Element gives an increase of up to times 1.5 in elemental damage on critical hits. Critical Status gives an increase of up to times 1.4 in status buildup on critical hits. These skills are basically elemental / status versions of Critical Boost. That also means that they do not themselves increase affinity. You need affinity to make use of these skills. Both skills are similar in their uniqueness as they are mainly used on the Master Rank Kulftroth weapons, which are already some of the best choices when it comes to element or status. As I mentioned at the start of this video, however, these are outside of my rating range. Critical Element can still be obtained by using 2 armor pieces of any Velkhana armor set. However, I will also not include armor of Arch-Tempered Velkhana, since that is another very difficult fight, and its base armor is really not that great. I also have to mention that there is a stronger version of this skill. That skill is much more restrictive as it requires 4 pieces of armor, but since those sets offer better overall skills, you should always choose True Critical Element over Critical Element. Therefore, this goes into the useless tier. Critical Status can only be activated on the Arshan armor set, which is complete garbage, so this belongs in useless too. Provoker makes it so that large monsters will mainly focus on you during a hunt. This goes straight to the detrimental tier. However, this can actually be beneficial in online play if you plan on creating a tank build or want the monster to mainly focus on you, which some weapons could technically benefit from, so keep that in mind. Offensive Guard grants you an up to 15% increase in attack power for 12 seconds after performing a Perfect Guard. A Perfect Guard is defined by having about a second or less pass between the point where you start guarding and where you get hit. As you can see, it's a very short buff, and therefore this goes into the useless tier for all weapons that can't guard and also reliably punish attacks quickly. This basically leaves you with the Lance and Charge Blade, for which I put this into the upper situational tier, since you still have to be very familiar with the monster to make effective use of this. Coalescence. Now this is a tricky one. After recovering from a blight or status, you are granted a flat increase in attack of up to +18, a flat increase in elemental attack of up to +90, and a percentual increase in status buildup of up to plus 15% for the next 90 seconds. The main part of this skill is obviously the elemental/status portion. This skill requires you to get hit, which at the same time is a good and a bad thing. Obviously, I will never encourage beginners to take hits on purpose, but you will get hit regardless. And there are monsters that use elemental attacks a lot, and will therefore inflict you with blights quite frequently. So I will put this in the lower situational tier, as it should be still replaced by a more reliable/safer means of damage increase. And obviously this should only be used with elemental weapons and against monsters that use elemental attacks a lot. Also, this skill can become more easy to activate by using exactly Blight Resistance level 2. Safe Landing. I honestly could not tell you what this does. This skill fixes something that I didn't even know existed. This goes into the useless tier. Bludgeoner gives you an increasing flat attack bonus of up to 30 when dropping to green, yellow and orange sharpness respectively. This immediately goes into the useless tier, although it's a neat and creative idea. Adrenaline slows down stamina depletion when at 40% or lower health. This is basically a stamina focused heroics, albeit condensed to a single level skill. This obviously goes to the useless tier for the very same reason heroics is there as well. Cold Proof negates the effects of cold weather. Useless. Just use a hot drink, it's not that hard. Clutch Claw Boost. As you might know, weapons are divided into heavy and light weapon types, which determines what happens upon performing a weapon attack while clutched onto a monster. Heavy weapons tenderize the monster's body part, and light weapons drop some slinger ammo and tenderize the monster's body part upon a second weapon attack. With this single level skill, every weapon type tenderizes on the first hit and drops some slinger ammo. For light weapons, this easily goes into the always useful tier, as tenderizing monster body parts is extremely useful for dealing damage. For heavy weapons, this goes into the lower situational tier, as most of the time you don't need the extra slinger ammo. I will also mention that you can buy the deco for this skill at the Elder. Now we go over all the set bonus skills. Set bonus skills are either regular skills or other bonus effects that only get activated once you equip a certain amount of armor pieces from a specified set. However, as long as the name of the set bonus matches, it does not matter what armor set the pieces are from. Anjanath Power, Legiana Blessing, Odogoron Power, Rathalos Power, Diablos Power and Kirin Blessing are all low-rank exclusive armor set bonus skills and will be ignored. Anjanath Will, Pink Rathian Mastery, Zora Magdaros Mastery, Legiana Favor, Odogoron Mastery, Rathalos Mastery, Diablos Mastery, Uragan Protection, Basilgeuse Protection, Nergigante Hunger, Valhazak Vitality, Kirin Favor, Xenojiva Divinity, Guild Guidance, Commission Guidance, Lunastra Favor, Soul of the Dragoon, and Witcher's Knowledge are all high-rank exclusive armor set bonus skills and will be ignored. Estera Blessing falls into both of the previous lists and will therefore also be ignored. Next are the remaining set bonus skills that appear on Master Rank and are the only ones that really matter. However, I first want to very quickly mention Safi'jiiva weapons. You can give 5 effects to a Safi'jiiva weapon. That includes the ability to change one of those weapons to an armor set bonus substitute, meaning that it will count as one equipped armor piece for that specific set bonus. Not all the set bonuses are possible to get, but most of them are. Stamina Cap Up is unlocked by wearing 2 pieces of the Master Rank Anja/Fulgur armor and increases your maximum stamina cap by 100, allowing for a total of 200. This is quite an amazing skill for stamina dependent weapons, but is sadly bound to an incredibly lackluster armor set. Poison Duration Up is unlocked by wearing 2 pieces of Master Rank Rathian/Wrathheart armor and extends the effect of poison on any poisoned monster. This quickly goes into useless, as these armor sets are pretty garbage. Wearing 2 pieces of the Arshan armor unlocks the critical status skill. Punishing Draw is unlocked by wearing 2 pieces of the Barioth armor or 1 piece of the Frostfang armor, and adds impact properties to your draw attacks. It also adds a flat increase of +5 attack for all weapons. This has the same flaws as Critical Draw. You never want to force your strategy to revolve around sheathing. This hinders you in your ability to actually get better at the game. However, while none of the Frostfang pieces are the best of the best, all of them are still very good. Wearing 3 pieces of the Master Rank Rathalos/Wrath Soul armor unlocks the Mind's Eye/Ballistics skill. Wearing 3 pieces of the Master Rank Legiana/Horcry armor unlocks the Bow Charge Plus skill. Wearing 3 pieces of the Master Rank Odogron/Death Garen armor unlocks the Protective Polish skill. Wearing 2 pieces of the Master Rank Uragan armor unlocks the Guard Up skill. True Razor Sharp/Spare Shot is unlocked by wearing 3 pieces of Nagakuga armor. This skill is a ramped up version of Razor Sharp/Spare Shot, reducing sharpness loss by 70% and preserving 30% of all ammo or coatings used. This skill is again easily outclassed by other skills for close range weapons, but is very powerful for ranged weapons. This goes into the upper situational tier due to technicality. The biggest detriment to this skill is the armor set it comes with. Its defense will be slightly lower than your top choices, and much more importantly, while the skills are not completely garbage, it will simply not leave you with much room for optimization. So what you can do is craft this to go through the story and switch it for better options once those become available. This can still be a really good choice while you don't have many options for skill slotting anyways. Capture Master is unlocked by wearing 2 pieces of the Master Rank Black Belt armor and grants a high chance for increased capture rewards at the end of a quest. I honestly do not care enough about this to determine if this goes into the Gather or the Useless tier, but it's almost definitely the latter because you choose a bad armor set, which in turn makes the capture quest take longer, negating the benefits of better rewards over a certain amount of time. Wearing 2 pieces of the Pride armor unlocks the Guts skill. Wearing 2 pieces of the Rime Guard armor unlocks the Critical Element skill. Frostcraft is unlocked by wearing 4 pieces of any Rime Guard armor. This skill adds a Frostcraft gauge to your UI that quickly fills as your weapon is sheathed and slowly fills as your weapon is drawn. As you perform attacks, the gauge gets depleted. The benefits are generally a 5, 20 and 25% increase of raw and elemental attack depending on the level. Frostcraft adds a whole new playstyle to each weapon. Some of them are not worth it, some are very complicated or heavily optimized/restrictive. So I will only rate this above useless for both the Greatsword, as it already attacks the most slowly, and the Sword and Shield, as sheathing to reposition yourself can be executed very quickly. For both weapons this goes into the lower situational tier, as this new playstyle still demands a lot of awareness and change in playstyle to even be considered useful. Additionally, keep in mind that while this can be very powerful, it drastically restricts you in the armor you can use, and when ignoring the Velkhana Gamma armor, you are left with mostly mediocre pieces. Super Recovery is unlocked by wearing 2 pieces of the Fell Shroud armor and starts passively regenerating health whenever there is no red portion of health and regenerates 1 HP per second. This is affected by Recovery Up, but to keep it simple, this is useless. It's extremely slow and massively outclassed by every other form of healing. Zombie and Effluvia Resistance is unlocked by wearing the full armor set Leon or Claire and works just like the Effluvia Resistance skill, with the addition of preventing the unique zombification status build-up in the event quest RE Return of the Bioweapon. I won't actually rate this skill individually, but I still wanted to mention it since it technically is a unique skill. Master's Touch is unlocked by wearing 3 pieces of high rank or master rank Teostra armor. This skill prevents all sharpness loss when landing a critical hit. This is absolutely the best skill regarding sharpness, and probably the best comfy offensive skill. That is because this set perfectly synergizes with already amazing offensive skills, such as Weakness Exploit, and if you manage to reach 100% affinity, then yes, you will never lose sharpness. And 100% affinity really is not that difficult to achieve on weak points if you are using Weakness Exploit. Therefore, this easily goes into the always useful category. The only reason it doesn't go to use it is because it's an armor set bonus and does restrict you in building towards your preferences. Also, this skill is obviously useless for ranged weapons. Nullify Wind Pressure is unlocked by wearing 3 pieces of high rank or master rank Kushalata Aura armor. This skill is simply Windproof level 5, but now also negates all winds from Kushalata Aura. Since this skill requires you to put on mediocre armor pieces, this is still useless. Great Luck is unlocked by wearing 3 pieces of the Master Rank Kirin armor or by wearing 4 pieces of the Artemis armor and grants a high chance of increased quest rewards. In true Monster Hunter movie fashion, this goes straight into the trash. Element Acceleration and True Element Acceleration are unlocked by wearing 2 or 4 pieces of any tentacle armor respectively. With this skill, continuously attacking a monster increases your elemental damage by plus 60 or plus 150 and activates free element/ammo up level 2 or level 3 respectively for 45 seconds. The skills activate after roughly 5 to 7 hits within a few seconds. While the two best choices for elemental damage can also activate these skills rather easily, there are still issues, and sadly those are quite severe. First, if you are using a weapon with high element, the plus 150 doesn't even necessarily outperform elemental attack level 6. You could just go for both, but then we run into the next issue, because this skill increases the base elemental damage by the stated value instead of increasing your damage as you hit the monster. That means that you will very quickly hit a damage cap, which heavily restricts you in your elemental damage output. Even more detriments come from the armor it's found on. While all three armor sets offer a lot of comfort skills, none of them are rated higher than upper situational, and none of them offer any offense. Element acceleration from 2 pieces is not at all worth it, and true element acceleration comes at the cost of sacrificing many offensive and defensive skills. Therefore, both go into the useless tier. Good Luck and Carving Master are unlocked by wearing 2 or 4 pieces of the Guild Palace/Guild Work armor respectively. Good Luck gives you a moderate chance of increased quest rewards, and Carving Master lets you carve monsters 1 additional time. I will put these into the Together tier, as together those skills can actually be not completely terrible when it comes to farming monster materials. Of course, if you are farming difficult monsters, you should still never use these sets. Gaia's Veil and True Gaia's Veil are unlocked by wearing 4 or 5 pieces of the Shara Ishvalder armor set, and this is easily the worst set bonus in the game. Let's find out why. Both versions grant you certain skills while wearing mantles. Gaia's Veil grants Windproof level 3, Earplugs level 3, Tremor Res level 3, and Flinch Free level 1. True Gaia's Veil grants Nullify Wind Pressure, Earplugs level 5, Tremor Res level 3, and Flinch Free level 1. Do you notice something? These are all skills I put into the useless or lower situational tier. Additionally, you are restricting yourself to the full Shara Ishvalder armor set, which is pretty trash. Now let's look at the mantles. By far the best 2 choices for general use are the Temporal Mantle and the Rocksteady Mantle. The Temporal Mantle automatically has you avoid any attack you get hit by, meaning it does not matter if you actually do get stunned by a roar, tremor, or wind. And the Rocksteady Mantle makes you 100% immune to all knockbacks, including winds, roars, and tremors, so this skill does literally nothing. But it gets better. As an in-game tutorial explains, while this skill is active, your mantle's uptime will get reduced whenever a wind, roar, or tremor is quote-unquote negated, which means that this skill does only one thing, and that is reducing your mantle's uptime. True Critical Element is unlocked by wearing 4 pieces of the Silver Rathalos and or Azure Age armor, and True Critical Status is unlocked by wearing 4 pieces of the Golden Loon armor. These skills are ramped up versions of the Critical Element and Critical Status skills. True Critical Element gives an increase of up to times 1.7 in elemental damage on critical hits. True Critical Status gives an increase of up to times 1.6 in status buildup on critical hits. True Critical Element goes into the upper situational tier. While this is very restrictive because of its 4 required armor pieces, you can still choose from a rather big variety, and some of them even grant extremely powerful offensive skills. True Critical Status goes into the useless tier. This is much more restrictive but also even more situational, as you can see by my placement of the status skills. Wearing 2 pieces of the Ruinous armor unlocks the Hasten Recovery skill. Wearing 2 or 4 pieces of the Golden armor unlocks the Mind's Eye/Ballistics or Protective Polish skill respectively. Ancient Armory is unlocked by wearing the full armor set Shield Weaver Plus, which is PlayStation exclusive and by default works like a Rocksteady Mantle. This effect will stay until you get hit 4 times. The armor will then take 2.5 minutes or 150 seconds to recharge and reactivate the skill. I won't rate this skill as it's very niche, only on a full armor set, and again only accessible on PlayStation. Joy's Gift and Joy's Gratitude are unlocked by wearing 3 or 5 pieces of the Oolong armor respectively. Gratitude's Gift and Gratitude's Blessing are unlocked by wearing 3 or 5 pieces of the Astral armor respectively. Full Bloom's Gift and Full Bloom Gratitude are unlocked by wearing 3 or 5 pieces of the Rose armor respectively. Sizzling Gift and Sizzling Gratitude are unlocked by wearing 3 or 5 pieces of the Passionate armor respectively. Fun Fright's Gift and Fun Fright's Gratitude are unlocked by wearing 3 or 5 pieces of the Demon Lord armor respectively. All these skills give you an increased chance of receiving the VIP version of the respective seasonal event's ticket. They therefore go into the farming tier. Following this, we get into skills that will simply be explained and not rated. I will still briefly touch upon their potential and usefulness, but that is simply directed towards more experienced players that are able to get their hands on those skills. Dragon Vein Awakening and True Dragon Vein Awakening are unlocked by wearing 3 or 5 pieces of the Safi Crested Armor respectively. You get a +8 or +15 increase in elemental attack, you get a +8 or +12 increase in status buildup, you get a +20% or +40% in affinity, and lastly the elemental and status caps are drastically increased. However, as you attack, you take damage. Only landing multiple consecutive hits heals you back up. This is an incredibly powerful set bonus as it grants a huge attack increase and heals you as long as you play well. It's high risk, very high reward, and an incredible set for experienced players in late game. Wearing 2 pieces of the Master Rank Kulthroth's armor unlocks the Guts skill. Element Conversion and all Elemental Resistance are unlocked by wearing 2 or 3 pieces of the Escadora armor respectively. Elemental Conversion increases your weapon's elemental attack by 5% of your total positive elemental resistances added together. So the higher your positive elemental defenses, the higher your elemental attack. All elemental resistance simply increases your elemental defense by 20%. The only reason you will ever use these skills is because you are using the armor set for its other benefits, as it already has quite the insane skill and slot options. There is one more set which I keep for last, as going over the other remaining section will more adequately show the capabilities of the respective skills. Following are the secret skills. They allow you to level a skill 2 levels beyond their limit. This rarely has any effect on the skill's rating, as it always just takes their effects and enhances them even further or makes them easier to activate. Bombardier Secret is unlocked by wearing 3 pieces of the Clockwork armor. Slugger Secret is unlocked by wearing 3 pieces of the Master Rank Diablos/Diablos Nero armor, or by wearing 3 pieces of the Frostfang armor. Maximum Might Secret is unlocked by wearing 3 pieces of the Glavenus/Acidic Glavenus armor, or by wearing 2 pieces of the Grand God Spear armor. Agitator Secret is unlocked by wearing 3 pieces of the Brachydios armor, or the full armor set Leon/Claire, or by wearing 2 pieces of the Brachydium armor. Free Meal Secret is unlocked by wearing 3 pieces of the Tigrex/Rex Roar armor, or by wearing 4 pieces of the Master Rank Kulthroth's armor. Stamina Thief Secret is unlocked by wearing 3 pieces of the Asurient armor. Artillery Secret is unlocked by wearing 3 pieces of the Master Rank Zora armor, or by wearing 4 pieces of the Brachydium armor. Latent Power Secret is unlocked by wearing 3 pieces of the Zenogre/Stygian armor. Divine Blessing Secret is unlocked by wearing 2 pieces of the Golden Loon armor. Slinger Ammo Secret is unlocked by wearing 2 pieces of the Silver Soul/Azure Age armor. Tool Specialist Secret is unlocked by wearing 3 pieces of the Master Rank Lunastra armor. Heroics Secret is unlocked by wearing 4 pieces of the Grand God Spear armor. Now, as promised, this is the final set bonus in the game. Inheritance and Transcendence are unlocked by wearing 2 or 4 pieces of the Dragon armor respectively. I just listed all the secret skills that enable you to level skills beyond their limit. Inheritance combines all those skills secrets into a single set bonus, allowing you to level any skill to its maximum potential. But we are just getting started. Remember the True Razor Sharp/Spare Shot skill? The one that was extremely overpowered but was sadly only on Nagakuga armor pieces? Well, not anymore. Transcendence grants you that skill on top of an already busted armor set. But wait, there's more. Remember the Anjanath set bonus that allows you to reach a maximum of 200 stamina? Well, Transcendence includes this skill as well and simply just gives you the extra 100 stamina for free without even having to take a meal. But wait, there's more. Remember Health Boost, the single greatest skill in the game? Transcendence just gives you double the effect of Health Boost level 3. That concludes my full tier list for all the skills rated regarding primarily beginner players. Make sure to like and subscribe if you liked it and you don't want to miss the full trophy guide for this game when it eventually comes out. Until then, have a good one.